My name is Rachel Roach. I am 42 years old, and for the last 19 years, my family has believed that I'm nothing more than a useless paper pusher. But I never imagined I would be publicly humiliated like this, right in the middle of Los Angeles International Airport. My brother Garrett stood there in his polished Armani suit, waving an economy class ticket in front of my face as if he were tossing a coin to a beggar. He laughed loud enough for the entire line to hear. "Here you go, Rach. Middle seat, right near the lavatory. You're used to suffering, right? First class isn't for people living paycheck to paycheck." My mother turned her face away, embarrassed for me. But what none of them knew was that inside the pocket of my cheap Walmart jacket was a code red military ID and a C-37B military jet waiting on the tarmac, engines running, just for me. They think I am the black sheep of the family. They have no idea that a storm is about to make landfall the moment the gate guard sees my badge. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and remember to hit subscribe if you have ever been looked down upon by your own blood because you chose a different path. The gravel crunched beneath the tires of my rusted Ford F-150 as I pulled into the driveway. It was 2:00 p.m. on Thanksgiving Thursday. I had just come off a 24-hour shift at the Pentagon, monitoring a developing situation in the South China Sea, running on nothing but stale coffee and adrenaline. My eyes burned, and every muscle in my body screamed for sleep, but I was here. I showed up. I always showed up. And of course, there was no room for me. My brother Garrett's brand new pearl white Tesla Model X was parked diagonally across the driveway, taking up enough space for 2 cars. It sat there like a spaceship that had landed in the middle of a suburb in Virginia, gleaming offensively under the autumn sun. I sighed, shifting my truck into reverse and parking halfway onto the damp grass of the front lawn. Before I could even cut the engine, the front door swung open. Garrett stepped out, holding a glass of Pinot Noir. He wasn't wearing an apron. He was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my truck's transmission. "Jesus, Rach," Garrett shouted, not bothering to come down the porch steps. "Do you have to park that heap on the lawn? You're bringing down the property value of the whole neighborhood. I think I saw an oil leak trailing you from the highway." "Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Garrett," I muttered to myself, grabbing my duffel bag. It was heavy, packed not just with clothes, but with a secure satellite phone that I prayed wouldn't ring. Inside, the house smelled of roasted sage, butter, and the suffocating scent of expectation. The Detroit Lions game was blaring from the massive 85-inch flat-screen TV, another gift from Garrett, naturally. My father was sitting in his recliner, his eyes glued to the screen, cheering as a touchdown was scored. "Hi, Dad," I said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. He didn't look away from the game. "Hey, kid, you're late. Garrett's been here since noon. He helped your mom set up the smart home system." "I was working, Dad. Shift ran long." "Working," he scoffed, finally glancing at my wrinkled flannel shirt and cargo pants. "Stamping forms at the DMV must be exhausting." I bit my tongue. The taste of copper was familiar. If only you knew, Dad. If only you knew that the forms I stamped last night prevented a naval blockade. We moved to the dining room. The table was a masterpiece of Norman Rockwell Americana, golden turkey, mounds of stuffing, cranberry sauce, and crystal wine glasses. Mom bustled out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She smiled at Garrett, a beam of pure sunshine, before her gaze landed on me and dimmed to a flickering candle. "Rachel, honey, try not to slouch. It makes you look defeated." We sat down. This was the moment I dreaded most, the carving of the turkey. It was a ritual that established the hierarchy of the Roach family. Mom picked up the serving fork. She skillfully sliced a massive, juicy drumstick, the dark meat dripping with flavor and fat. She placed it reverently onto Garrett's plate. "For my genius," she cooed. "You need the protein, Garrett. Running a company in Silicon Valley takes so much brain power. You look thin. Is the stress getting to you?" Garrett chuckled, swirling his wine. "You know how it is, Mom. The IPO market is brutal right now. I've been pulling 18-hour days just to keep the investors happy. But hey, that's the price of being a disruptor. High risk, high reward." Then, Mom turned to me. She sliced a piece of the breast meat. It was white, dry, and looked like chalk. She dropped it onto my plate without gravy. And for you, Rachel, white meat is better, less fat, since your job is mostly sedentary. You don't want to gain any more weight, especially at your age. No man wants a wife who lets herself go. I looked at the dry meat. I had eaten MREs in the deserts of Kandahar that had more moisture than this. Thanks, Mom. I'm actually physically active. I run 5 miles every morning. Running away from responsibilities isn't the same as exercise, Garrett interjected, his mouth full of stuffing. The table laughed. Even Dad chuckled. I cut into the turkey. It was sawdust. I swallowed it down with water because no one had offered me wine. So, Garrett announced, clapping his hands together as if calling a board meeting to order. Big news, huge news. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box wrapped in gold foil. He slid it across the table to Mom and Dad. They opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a key fob, a Lexus key fob. Happy early anniversary, Garrett beamed. It's parked down the street, the 2025 hybrid SUV. Heated seats, self-driving capability, the works. Mom burst into tears. Dad stood up and shook Garrett's hand, patting him on the back so hard I thought he'd dislocate a shoulder. My boy, my incredible boy, you do too much for us. It's nothing. Garrett waved a hand dismissively, checking his Apple Watch. You guys sacrifice for me. It's only right. Oh wait, Rachel. He snapped his fingers. I almost forgot. I have something for you too. My stomach tightened. I didn't want his charity. He pulled a crumpled envelope out of his back pocket and tossed it across the table. It landed near my water glass. I saw these in the break room at the office. One of the interns was throwing them out. It's a bundle of coupons for Costco and Walmart. Bulk rice, canned beans, stuff like that. I think some expired last week, but usually if you make a scene, the cashiers will still honor them. The silence in the room was deafening. My parents looked at me with pity. Take them, Rachel, Dad said softly. Garrett is just looking out for you. We know money is tight with your government salary. I stared at the coupons. 50 cents off canned tuna. I don't need these, Garrett, I said, my voice steady, though my hand trembled beneath the table. Don't be proud, Rach, Garrett smirked. Pride is expensive. You can't afford it. Speaking of affording things, Garrett continued, pivoting back to the center of attention. For the actual 50th wedding anniversary next month, I've booked it. We are going to Hawaii. Mom gasped. Hawaii? Oh, Garrett. All expenses paid. First class for you and Dad. 5-star resort in Maui. I'm renting a private cabana. He paused, looking at me with faux concern. Rachel, you're coming too, obviously. I'll cover your flight. Don't worry, I know the resort is pricey, so I found a nice hostel a few miles inland for you. It's clean, and there's a shuttle bus to the beach. I started to speak. I wanted to tell them that I was just promoted to full colonel, that I commanded respect from generals, that I could buy that resort if I liquidated my assets. Actually, I have some news too, I tried, my voice fighting to be heard over their excitement. I received a promotion last week. My new assignment is significant. Dad waved his fork at me, cutting me off mid-sentence. Rachel, please, not now. Let's not make this a competition. We are celebrating your brother's generosity. Your steady little pension is fine, honey, but don't try to dream big like your brother. It just leads to disappointment. I closed my mouth. I looked at the dry turkey on my plate. I looked at the expired coupons. Okay, I whispered. Hawaii. Thank you, Garrett. You're welcome, he said, winking at Mom. Someone has to carry the luggage, right? 2 hours later, I was back in my truck. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The leather of the wheel creaked under the pressure. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just breathed in the cold air, letting the silence wash over the noise of their laughter still echoing from the house. I stared at my hands. These hands had held rifles. They had signed orders that changed the course of history. Now, they were shaking because of a damn coupon. I started the engine. The old Ford roared to life. I wasn't going to tell them. Not yet. If they wanted a porter for their trip to Hawaii, fine, I would go. But they had no idea who was really getting on that plane with them. The drive from the suburbs back to DC took 45 minutes, but it felt like traveling between two different planets. I left the suffocating air of my parents' house, smelling of sage stuffing and judgment, and drove straight into the sterile, cold precision of my real life. My apartment is located in the Navy Yard district, a high-security building filled with government contractors and agency spooks. The rent here is more than my father thinks I make in 3 months at the DMV. I parked my rusted Ford F-150 in the underground garage, specifically in a spot tucked away behind a concrete pillar, far from the polished BMWs and Audis of my neighbors. I took the elevator up to the penthouse floor. No keys here. I leaned forward, letting the retinal scanner read my eye. The lock clicked open with a heavy, satisfying thud of reinforced steel. Inside, the apartment was dark, silent, and impeccably clean. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a safe house. There were no family photos on the mantel, no throw pillows, just sleek modern furniture and a secure hardline phone sitting on the coffee table, its red light blinking steadily to indicate the encryption was active. I threw my cheap Walmart jacket onto the couch and walked into the bedroom. I stripped off the flannel shirt and the baggy cargo pants, leaving them in a pile on the floor. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, the illusion of Rachel the clerk finally dissolved. My body wasn't soft or sedentary. It was hardened by 19 years of obstacle courses, desert hikes, and hand-to-hand combat drills. But it was the scars that told the real story. I ran my fingers over the raised, jagged keloid scar on my left shoulder. It was ugly, a twisting knot of purple and white tissue. My mind drifted back, not to the dinner table I just left, but to the Korangal Valley in Afghanistan, 10 years ago. We were ambushed during a routine patrol. The air had smelled of burning rubber and cordite. I remembered the sound, not a bang, but a wet thwack, as the sniper's round tore through my shoulder. I didn't cry out. I dragged my radio operator to cover behind a rock wall while returning fire with my M4 carbine. I directed air support while bleeding through my tactical vest. I saved 3 lives that day. I remembered calling my mother from the field hospital in Germany a week later. I was high on morphine, desperate to hear a friendly voice. "Mom," I had rasped. "I got hurt. My shoulder." "Oh, Rachel," she had sighed, the sound of a game show blaring in the background. "What did you do now? Did you fall off your bicycle again? You were always so clumsy as a child. Honestly, you need to be more careful. How are you ever going to wear a strapless dress at your wedding with a scar like that? It's going to look hideous." I had hung up the phone and stared at the white ceiling of the hospital ward. I fell off a bike. That was the lie I told them. And that was the lie they chose to believe because it fit their narrative. Rachel, the klutz. Rachel, the failure. I walked over to the biometric safe built into the wall of my closet. I pressed my thumb against the pad. The door hissed open. Inside wasn't jewelry or cash. Hanging in a plastic protective bag was my dress blues uniform. On the shoulders, the silver eagles of a full colonel gleamed under the closet light. Pinned to the chest were rows of ribbons, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Legion of Merit. Below them lay my service pistol, a Sig Sauer P320, cleaned and oiled. This was who I really was. A ghost, a warrior, a commander. But to my family, I was just a way to save money. I remembered the day Garrett got into Stanford. The party was legendary. My parents rented a tent for the backyard. There was champagne, catered seafood, and a banner that said, "Future Billionaire." My father went around telling everyone, "My son is going to change the world." Stanford, can you believe it? It costs a fortune, but he's worth every penny. 2 years later, when I received my acceptance letter to West Point, the United States Military Academy, there was no party, no banner. We were eating meatloaf for dinner. I put the letter on the table. "I got in," I said, my heart pounding with pride. "West Point, I'm going to serve my country." Dad chewed his meatloaf slowly. He looked at the letter, then at me. "Well," He wiped his mouth with a napkin. That's practical. No tuition fees. The government pays for everything, right? Good. At least you won't be a financial burden on us like you would be at a regular college. Just try not to quit during the first week, Rachel. It's tough, and you know you're soft. Soft. I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand and pulled out a simple wooden box. This was my memory box. Inside were 19 years of letters. Handwritten letters. Letters I had written by the light of a headlamp in a dusty tent in Iraq. Letters I had written while shivering in a bunker in Syria. Letters where I tried to tell them, in code, that I loved them. That I was scared, that I missed home. I had mailed them. And over the years, when I visited home, I would find them. Sometimes in the junk drawer in the kitchen. Sometimes in the recycling bin, unopened. They had never even broken the seals. I picked up one envelope from 2015. It was still sealed shut. But right next to it in the box were the stubs of the cashier's checks I had sent. Every single check had been cashed immediately. They cashed the money to pay off their mortgage, to help Garrett with his first failed startup, to buy that new patio set. But they couldn't spare 2 minutes to read the words of their daughter, who was sleeping with a rifle in her sleeping bag. I felt a lump form in my throat, hot and sharp. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a cold, hard realization. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of bourbon, Woodford Reserve, neat. The amber liquid burned pleasantly as it went down, settling the turmoil in my stomach. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window of the penthouse. Beyond the glass, the lights of Washington, D.C. twinkled. Out there, thousands of people were sleeping peacefully because people like me stood watch in the dark. I commanded special operations teams. I held national secrets that could topple governments. I was respected. I was feared. But in that house in the suburbs, I was just Rachel. The girl who fell off her bike. The girl who needed coupons. I took another sip of bourbon. The silence of the apartment was heavy, but it was honest. I know I'm not the only one. There are so many of you out there listening who are the strong ones of the family, the ones who carry the weight while others get the glory. If you have ever felt invisible to the people who are supposed to love you the most, I want you to know. I see you. Your sacrifice matters. Please pause for a second and comment, "I see you," below. Let's create a wall of support for everyone who is fighting a battle their family knows nothing about. Like this video if you believe respect is earned, not given. I set the glass down. The alcohol was starting to numb the edges of the pain. I needed to sleep. In a few days, I would be on a plane to Hawaii with them. I would have to put the mask back on. I would have to be the clumsy, poor loser sister one last time. But this time, I was bringing something else with me. I looked at the secure phone on the table. It remained silent, for now. "Who protects me?" I whispered to the empty room. The only answer was the hum of the refrigerator. I turned off the lights, letting the darkness swallow the kernel, leaving only the daughter alone in the dark. The air inside the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, or SCIF, deep within the bowels of the Pentagon, always tasted the same. Recycled oxygen, ozone from overheating server racks, and the bitter tang of stale coffee. I hadn't slept in 72 hours. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand, and a dull throb had taken up permanent residence behind my temples. "Colonel Roach, we have a situation developing on the screens," a young lieutenant said, his voice tight. "The malware signature matches the blackout group. They aren't just pinging the firewalls anymore, they're inside the Hawaiian power grid control systems." I stared at the massive wall of monitors. Maps of the Hawaiian Islands were lit up in ominous shades of red and amber. "Status of the failsafes?" I asked, my voice calm, betraying none of the exhaustion dragging at my bones. "Compromised," the lieutenant replied. "If they execute the code, the entire island of Oahu goes dark. Hospitals, air traffic control, military bases, everything. We're looking at a total infrastructure collapse within 48 hours. I took a sip of lukewarm black coffee. "Isolate the infected nodes. Get the NSA on the line. I want a trace on that signal, and I want it yesterday." "Yes, ma'am." The room was a hive of controlled chaos. Analysts were shouting coordinates, keyboards were clacking like machine gun fire, and the fate of over 1 million American citizens hung in the balance. And then, my pocket vibrated. It wasn't my secure satellite phone. It was my personal burner phone, the cheap flip phone I kept solely for family emergencies. In this room, bringing a personal device was a court-martial offense for anyone else. For me, it was a necessary evil of maintaining my cover, authorized by the director himself. I ignored it. It vibrated again and again. A long, insistent buzzing against my hip that felt louder than the sirens on the monitors. "Colonel?" The lieutenant looked at me, confused by the noise. "Ignore it," I snapped, typing a command into my terminal. "Just a glitch." I pulled the phone out under the table, shielding the screen. I expected to see a hospital notification. Maybe Dad had a heart attack. Maybe Mom fell. It was a text message from Blanca, my sister-in-law. "Hey Rach, quick reminder for packing. Make sure you bring your own sunscreen. I'm packing my La Mer and Super Goop, and my skin is super sensitive so I can't share. Just grab some Banana Boat or whatever generic brand you use from Walmart. Thanks." XOXO. I stared at the screen, my brain struggling to process the sheer absurdity of the words. I was currently orchestrating a counter-cyber warfare operation to prevent the people of Hawaii from being plunged into the Stone Age. I was authorizing the deployment of cyber countermeasures that cost more than Garrett's entire company, and my sister-in-law was worried I would steal her $300 face cream. I didn't reply. I couldn't. If I typed what I was thinking, I might accidentally authorize a drone strike on her vanity table. "Ma'am," another analyst called out, "we have a physical signature. We've tracked the signal origin. It's not coming from overseas, it's local. The uplink is coming from a hardline connection at a resort in Waikiki. They're on the ground." "They're in Oahu?" I asked, my blood running cold. "If they're local, this isn't just hacking. This is sabotage. We need boots on the ground to secure the server room physically. We can have a Delta Force team spun up from Fort Bragg in 2 hours," the lieutenant suggested. "Do it," I ordered. "Get the paperwork ready for my signature." The phone in my pocket rang this time. It wasn't a text. It was a call. "Garrett." I looked at the ops clock. The situation was critical, but if I didn't answer, Garrett would call Mom, Mom would panic, and she would call the police to do a wellness check on my apartment, which would trigger a security standoff with the Secret Service detail that monitored my building. "I need 2 minutes," I told the room. "Keep tracing." I stepped out into the hallway, the heavy steel door sealing the noise of the crisis behind me. I pressed the phone to my ear. "This is Rachel." "Finally," Garrett's voice boomed, loud and arrogant. I could hear the clinking of silverware in the background. He was probably at a power lunch. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. Did you put in for the PTO yet?" "The what?" I rubbed my eyes. "Paid time off, Rachel, for the Hawaii trip. It's next week. I need to know if you cleared your schedule. I don't want you flaking out at the last minute because your manager needs you to sort mail or whatever it is you do." I looked through the reinforced glass window of the SIF. Inside, the lieutenant was holding up a clipboard with the deployment authorization for a Tier 1 Special Operations Unit. He needed my signature to send lethal operators into American territory. "Garrett, it's a busy time at work," I said, my voice flat. "We have a large project finishing up." Garrett laughed. It was a dry, condescending sound. "A project? What, is it tax season for the DMV? Listen, Rach, just tell them you have a family emergency, or just quit. Honestly, it's not like you're building rockets. I'm paying for the whole trip. The least you can do is show up to help Mom and Dad with their bags. They're old, they can't be hauling suitcases around the airport." My hand tightened around the phone. "I'm asking for the time off, Garrett. My boss is strict." "Strict," he scoffed. "It's a government job, Rachel. It's impossible to get fired. Just grow a spine and tell them you're leaving." "God, do I have to negotiate for you? Do you want me to call your supervisor and explain that my time is worth $5,000 an hour and I'm wasting it on this conversation?" "No," I said quickly. The thought of Garrett calling General Miller and trying to big league him was almost funny, in a terrifying way. "No, don't do that. I'll handle it. Good. And hey, Blanca says you read her text about the sunscreen. She's serious, Rachel. Don't be a mooch. We're staying at the Four Seasons, but remember, your hostel is a bit of a trek, so make sure you pack comfortable shoes. Got it. Cheap sunscreen, walking shoes. Understood. All right, gotta go. I have a meeting with venture capitalists. Try not to mess this up. The line went dead. I stood there for a moment in the sterile hallway, listening to the hum of the ventilation system. The contrast was so sharp it almost made me dizzy. In one ear, I was a mooch, a failure, a porter for my aging parents. In the other ear, I was the only thing standing between order and chaos. I walked back into the situation room. The lieutenant handed me the tablet. Deployment order ready, Colonel. Delta Team 6 is on standby. But we need a field commander to coordinate the physical breach with the cyber response. Someone who knows the terrain and the tech. I looked at the map of Oahu on the big screen. The target location was a server farm disguised as a utility shed, less than 5 miles from the Four Seasons resort where my parents would be celebrating their anniversary. Fate, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. I took the stylus and signed my name on the digital pad. Rachel L. Roach, Colonel, USA SOC. I'll go, I said. The lieutenant blinked. Ma'am, you want to lead the field team. You've been awake for 3 days. It's the perfect cover, I said, my voice hardening. I have a family trip booked for Hawaii next week. I can move up my departure. I'll enter the island as a civilian tourist. No military transport manifest. No red flags for the hackers to spot. I'll coordinate the team from the ground while I'm there. Understood, Colonel. I looked at the flight itinerary Garrett had emailed me earlier. Economy class, middle seat. Get me on the secure line to General Miller, I ordered, grabbing my headset. Tell him I'm taking the mission, and tell him I'm going to need to combine my leave with active duty. I looked down at my burner phone one last time. Don't worry, Garrett, I thought. I'll be there. I'll carry the bags. I'll buy the cheap sunscreen. But when the lights go out and the guns come out, you're going to wish you had paid a little more attention to the sister who stamps your forms. The E-ring of the Pentagon is different from the rest of the building. The corridors here are wider, the floors are polished to a mirror shine, and the air smells of furniture, polish, and history. This is where the power lives. It is a place where decisions are made that can shift borders or topple regimes. I walked down the hallway, my boots clicking rhythmically against the tile. My uniform was pressed, my hair pulled back into a tight bun, but inside I felt like I was unraveling. The weight of the impending cyber attack in Hawaii was heavy enough, but the weight of the lies I was about to tell my family felt even heavier. I stopped in front of a mahogany door with a gold placard, Major General Mike Iron Miller. I knocked twice. Enter! A gravelly voice boomed from inside. I stepped in and stood at attention. Colonel Roach reporting as ordered, sir. Major General Miller sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single redwood tree. He was a man of 60, with a buzz cut that was more salt than pepper and eyes that could cut through steel plating. He was smoking a cigar, strictly against regulations, but nobody told Iron Miller what to do. He looked up, his face softening instantly. At ease, Rachel. Sit down. You look like hell. Thank you, sir, I said, sinking into the leather chair opposite him. It's been a long 72 hours. I saw the briefing on the Hawaii grid, Miller said, sliding a thick file folder across the desk. Nasty business, blackout group. If they hit the transformers, we lose the Pacific Command's eyes and ears for days. Your plan to embed yourself on the island under civilian cover is solid. Risky, but solid. He flipped open the file, scanning the logistics. He nodded at the equipment list, the weapon requisition, and the comms protocol. Then, his finger stopped. He frowned. Colonel, he said, his voice dropping an octave. What is this? He turned the file around. He was pointing at a printout of an airline ticket. United Airlines, economy class, seat 34B. That's my transport, sir, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I'm traveling with my family. It's the cover story. Miller looked at me over the rim of his reading glasses. You are the commander of USA's Isaki Special Operations. You are spearheading a top priority national security defense mission, and you are flying coach in a middle seat? I shifted uncomfortably. My brother, Garrett, he booked the tickets. He insisted. If I book my own travel or fly military transport, it blows my cover. They think I work a low-level administrative job. They think I can't afford a better seat. Miller slowly closed the file. He took a long drag of his cigar, the smoke curling around his head like a halo. Rachel, how long have you worked for me? 12 years, sir, since I was a captain. And in those 12 years, I have seen you take shrapnel for a rookie. I have seen you negotiate with warlords without blinking. I have seen you build this unit from the ground up. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. So tell me, why does your family treat you like a servant? I looked down at my hands. They don't know, sir. They can't know. There is a difference between OPSEC and abuse, Miller said sharply. I've heard the voicemails you get. I've seen you skip Christmas leave because you didn't want to go home to be ridiculed. You are a warrior, Rachel. You command respect from 4-star generals. Why do you let these civilians treat you like garbage? Because they are my family, I whispered. And maybe because part of me still believes them. Maybe I am just the clumsy little sister. Miller slammed his hand on the desk. The sound made me jump. Bullshit, he growled. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the Potomac River. You are the finest officer I have ever trained, and I will be damned if I let the United States Army be complicit in this disrespect. You want a cover story? Fine. But you are traveling like the asset you are. He reached for the red phone on his desk, the direct line to the Air Mobility Command. This is General Miller, he barked into the receiver. I need a bird. Immediate deployment to Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii. Code red priority. He paused, listening. No, not a C-130 cargo hauler. I want a C-37B Gulfstream, the VIP transport. Yes, the one with the leather seats and the satellite uplink. My eyes widened. Sir, that's unnecessary. The budget. He waved a hand to silence me. I don't care about the budget. I care about my colonel arriving in the theater of operations, rested and ready to fight. And I want a full MP escort at the gate. He hung up the phone and looked at me. A small, mischievous smile played on his lips. You said you needed to maintain your cover until you left, right? So, go to the airport with them. Let them play their little games. Let your brother wave his platinum credit card. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a new ID card. It was black with a red holographic strip. But when you get to the gate, Miller said, sliding the card to me, you use this. It triggers the Priority 1 protocol. It authorizes immediate extraction from civilian lines for key military personnel. I picked up the card. It felt heavy, warm to the touch. Sir, this is... Thank you. Don't thank me, he said gruffly. Just save the island. I stood up to leave, clutching the card. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I turned to the door, but Miller's voice stopped me. Rachel. I turned back. The general, the Iron Man who supposedly had ice water in his veins, had walked around his desk. He stood in front of me, towering and formidable. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he reached out and placed both of his heavy hands on my shoulders. He squeezed firmly, a grounding, solid weight. I know your father, Miller said softly. I know the type. He looks at bank accounts to measure a man's worth. He looks at titles. He's blind, Rachel. He's looking right at a diamond and seeing a piece of glass. I felt my throat tighten. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep my composure. You have saved more lives in 19 years than that brother of yours will save in 10 lifetimes, Miller continued, his voice fierce and low. You don't need their permission to be great. You don't need their applause. He looked me dead in the eye. America is proud of you, Colonel. And I am proud of you. Now stand tall. That is an order. A single tear escaped my eye, tracking hot down my cheek. I quickly wiped it away, but Miller didn't look away. He didn't judge. He just held my shoulders for a second longer, transferring some of his strength into me. "Yes, sir," I managed to say, my voice trembling slightly. "Dismissed," he said, stepping back and returning to his gruff persona. "Get out of here, and bring me back some macadamia nuts." I walked out of the office, closing the heavy mahogany door behind me. The corridor was empty. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of the Pentagon. "America is proud of you." My own father had never said those words, not once. I touched the pocket of my uniform where the black ID card sat. My brother had a ticket to a middle seat for me. General Miller had a $40 million jet waiting for me. I straightened my back. I adjusted my collar. Let Garrett have his moment at the check-in counter. Let my mother make her snide comments about my weight and my job. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going to Hawaii as their daughter. I was going as a colonel. And God help anyone who stood in my way. The black Cadillac Escalade idled in my parents' driveway like a hearse waiting for a funeral, its engine purring with a deep, expensive rumble. It was a hired car service, naturally. Garrett didn't drive himself to the airport. He liked to optimize his travel time by answering emails in the back seat. I stood by the trunk, staring at the mountain of luggage. There were 4 massive Louis Vuitton steamer trunks, the kind with the hard shell and the monogram pattern that screamed, "I have more money than taste." "Careful with that one, Rachel," Blanca screeched from the front porch. She was checking her makeup in a compact mirror, wearing oversized sunglasses that probably cost more than my first car. "The leather scuffs easily. Lift with your knees, not your back." I gritted my teeth and hoisted the first trunk. It weighed at least 50 pounds. My biceps strained, the muscles hard and defined under my cheap jacket, but I kept my face blank. Garrett stood by the driver's side door, chatting with the hired chauffeur. He wasn't helping. He was adjusting the clasp of his Rolex Submariner, catching the sunlight just right so the driver would notice it. "Yeah, we're heading to Maui for the week," Garrett was saying loudly. "Needed a break from the grind. You know how it is in the valley. Burnout is real." I slammed the trunk shut after heaving the last bag inside. Sweat prickled at my hairline. My lower back throbbed, a reminder of a jump landing that went wrong 2 years ago, but I ignored it. "All set?" Garrett asked, glancing at me without really seeing me. "Great. Hop in." The seating arrangement was a masterclass in humiliation. Garrett and Blanca took the middle captain's chairs, plush leather recliners with individual climate control. Mom and Dad took the rear bench, stretching out their legs. Garrett's 2 kids, Leo and Sophie, claimed the 3rd row, surrounding themselves with pillows and iPads. That left me. "Just squeeze in the back with the bags, Rach," Garrett said, waving a hand vaguely toward the cargo area. "There's a jump seat back there. It folds down. You're small, you'll fit." I climbed over the rear bumper, wedging myself into the narrow space between the stacked Louis Vuitton trunks and the rear window. My knees were pressed against my chest. A hard corner of a suitcase dug into my ribcage. I had ridden in the back of unpressurized C-130 cargo planes on pallets of ammunition that were more comfortable than this. The driver merged onto the highway, and almost immediately, we hit the legendary Los Angeles traffic. The I-405 was a parking lot of shimmering heat and exhaust fumes. Brake lights stretched as far as the eye could see. "Ugh, traffic," Blanca sighed, reclining her seat so far back it nearly crushed Dad's knees. "Garrett, did you download the new season of Bluey for the kids?" "Yeah, they're good," Garrett said, tapping on his phone. From the row in front of me, the noise began. Leo and Sophie had their iPads at maximum volume. The sound of cartoon explosions and high-pitched voices filled the cabin. Then came the candy. Thwack! A half-chewed Skittle hit me in the forehead. I wiped it off, staring at the sticky red sugar on my finger. Sophie giggled, peeking over the headrest. She threw a wrapper next. It landed in my lap. "Kids, settle down," Garrett said. But he didn't look up from his phone. His tone was indulgent, like he was talking to puppies, not unruly children assaulting their aunt. My stomach growled loud enough to be heard over the engine. I hadn't eaten since the turkey disaster yesterday. "Oh, that reminds me," Garrett said, reaching into a brown paper bag at his feet. The rich, nutty aroma of Starbucks coffee suddenly filled the car, overpowering the smell of leather and stale air. My mouth watered instantly. Dad, here's your cappuccino. Extra foam. Garrett passed a cup back. Mom, chai tea latte. Blanca, venti soy latte, no foam, 2 pumps of vanilla. Kids, here are your hot chocolates. He passed the cups back, one by one. I watched the steam rising from the white lids. I waited. Garrett took a sip of his own nitro cold brew and set the bag down. It was empty. Oh, he said, glancing in the rearview mirror, meeting my eyes for a split second. Oops. I totally forgot to ask you what you wanted, Rach. He didn't look sorry. He looked bored. It's fine, I lied. My voice sounded raspy. Well, I honestly assumed you ate breakfast at home, he continued, shrugging. And besides, those fancy drinks are full of sugar. You're better off without them. I think there's a bottle of water in the side door pocket if you're thirsty. It might be warm, though. I looked at the door pocket. There was a half-empty plastic bottle of water, the label peeling off. It looked like trash left by a previous passenger. Thanks, Garrett, I said dryly. Hydration is key. Exactly, he said, turning back to Blanca. See? She prefers water. It's a budget thing. When you don't have money, you learn to appreciate the free stuff. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. I turned my head to look out the rear window. We were crawling past the Sepulveda Pass. Thousands of cars. Thousands of people going about their lives. None of them knew that the woman crammed into the trunk of this Cadillac, being pelted with candy wrappers, was carrying a clearance code that could ground every single flight at LAX. We finally pulled up to the curb at Tom Bradley International Terminal. The chaos of the airport was immediate. Whistles blowing, shuttles honking, people shouting. I scrambled out of the back, my legs numb from the cramped position. I nearly stumbled as my blood rushed back to my feet. All right, let's move, people. Garrett clapped his hands. Curbside check-in is for amateurs. We're going inside to the priority line. I began unloading the bags again. Lift, swing, drop, lift, swing, drop. I stacked them onto a cart, sweat trickling down my spine under my heavy jacket. Garrett, Blanca, and the kids started walking toward the sliding glass doors. Dad followed, adjusting his hat. Mom lingered behind for a second. She walked up to me as I struggled to push the heavy cart. Rachel, she whispered, leaning in close. For a second, I thought she was going to thank me, or maybe offer to carry a carry-on bag. Listen, she said, her voice low and urgent. When we get inside, try to walk a few paces behind us, okay? I froze. What? She reached out and picked a piece of lint off my shoulder, her nose wrinkling in distaste. It's just... Look at you. That jacket is fraying at the cuffs, and your hair is a mess. There are going to be a lot of important people in the first-class line. Business associates of Garrett's might be there. We don't want them to get the wrong idea. The wrong idea? I repeated slowly. That the family is... struggling, she said, giving me a pitying smile. You understand, don't you? It's for Garrett's image. Just keep a little distance, like you're helping us, but not with us. She patted my cheek, a soft, stinging tap, and turned to hurry after the others. Come on, don't dawdle. I stood there on the curb, the roar of a departing 747 shaking the ground beneath my boots. Like you're helping us, but not with us. I looked at my hands. They were trembling, not from the weight of the bags, but from a rage so pure, so white-hot, that it felt like it could melt the asphalt. I dug my fingernails into my palms until I felt the sharp bite of pain. It was the only thing keeping me from screaming. Copy that, Mom, I whispered to the exhaust fumes. Distance. You want distance? I'll give you distance. I pushed the cart forward, my eyes fixed on Garrett's back. He was striding through the automatic doors, laughing at something Blanca said, completely oblivious to the shadow following him. He thought he was walking into a VIP lounge. He didn't know he was walking into a firing squad. I touched the hard plastic of the ID card in my pocket one last time. It was time to check in. The automatic sliding doors of the Tom Bradley International Terminal hissed open, and the wall of sound hit us instantly. It was the unique symphony of LAX, A chaotic blend of wheelie bag wheels rattling over tiles, the rhythmic announcements over the PA system about unattended luggage, and the low hum of thousands of stressed travelers. For most people, this environment is a nightmare. For my brother Garrett, it was a stage. He adjusted the lapels of his blazer, checking his reflection in the glass. "All right, troop, stay close," he commanded, though he was only looking at his wife and kids. "We're going priority. I don't do lines." I was 10 feet behind them, wrestling the luggage cart which had a wobbling left wheel. The 4 massive Louis Vuitton trunks were stacked precariously high, threatening to topple over with every bump in the floor. People glared at me as I maneuvered the monstrosity through the crowd, muttering apologies that nobody heard. Garrett marched straight toward the United Airlines counter, bypassing the serpentine line of tired families and backpackers that snaked back toward the entrance. He walked right up to the red carpet marked Premier Access, 1K, Global Services. There was a velvet rope. He unhooked it himself, not waiting for the attendant, and strode up to the counter like he owned the airline. "Garrett Roach," he announced loudly, slapping his passport and a heavy metal American Express Platinum card onto the counter. "Party of 7, I'm a Premier Platinum member, and I have 4 overweight bags, but you're going to waive the fees because, well, look at the status." The agent, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, sighed imperceptibly. She began typing. "Good morning, Mr. Roach. I see your reservation. Flying to Honolulu today?" "Maui," Garrett corrected her sharply. "Connection in Honolulu, but make sure our bags are tagged all the way through with priority tags. I don't want to wait at the carousel with the general population." I finally caught up, breathless, pushing the cart up to the scale. My face was flushed from the exertion. Garrett didn't offer to help lift the bags onto the belt. He just tapped his foot impatiently. "Faster, Rachel," he hissed. "You're holding up the line." I heaved the 50-pound trunks onto the scale, one by one. My shoulder, the one with the keloid scar from the sniper's bullet, throbbed with a dull, hot pain. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep my face neutral. "All right," Brenda said, the printer whirring to life behind the counter. "I have your boarding passes here." She placed a stack of glossy cardstock tickets on the counter. Garrett picked them up, fanning them out like a winning poker hand. He turned to the family, a benevolent king bestowing gifts upon his subjects. "Mom, Dad." He handed them 2 tickets. Row 2, seats A and B. First class, fully, lie-flat seats. "I ordered the vegan meal for you, Mom, and the steak for you, Dad. Champagne is served before takeoff." "Oh, Garrett," Mom gushed, clutching the ticket to her chest. "You spoil us. Look, honey, it says Zone 1. "Blanca, kids." Garrett handed out the next 3. "We're in row 3. Sophie, you get the window so you can see the clouds. Leo, you've got the aisle so you can run around." "Yay, first class!" Leo cheered, sticking his tongue out at a kid standing in the economy line. Then, there was one ticket left. It wasn't printed on the glossy cardstock. It was printed on the flimsy thermal receipt paper that curled at the edges. Garrett held it up. He didn't hand it to me immediately. He waved it in the air, a little white flag of surrender. The terminal was crowded, and people nearby, businessmen in suits, families on vacation, were watching. Garrett loved an audience. "And for you, Rach," he said, his voice booming with a performative joviality that made my skin crawl. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the stale airport air was nauseating. "I tried my best," he lied, grinning. "But you know, holiday pricing is insane. So, here you go." He thrust the flimsy paper toward my face. "Seat 42E, he announced clearly, ensuring the people in the line behind us could hear. "That's the middle seat, right in the back row, right next to the lavatory. You know, where the magic happens." Blanca let out a sharp, high-pitched giggle, then covered her mouth with her manicured hand. "Oh, Garrett, stop it. That's mean." But her eyes were dancing with amusement. Garrett chuckled, shaking his head. "Hey, I'm doing her a favor. She's used to suffering, right? I mean, look at her." He gestured vaguely at my outfit, the frayed Walmart jacket, the worn-out sneakers. "First class isn't for people living paycheck to paycheck, Rach. You'd feel out of place. You wouldn't know which fork to use. The world seemed to slow down. I could hear the whir click of the luggage belt moving my parents' bags away. I could hear the ding of the announcement chime. I could feel the eyes of the strangers around us. Some looked pitying. Some looked embarrassed. My mother turned away, pretending to be fascinated by a duty-free advertisement on the wall. My father adjusted his hat, looking at his shoes. They were ashamed. Not of Garrett's cruelty, but of me. Of my poverty. Of the fact that I was the punchline of the family joke. "Come on, take it," Garrett said, wagging the ticket. "Boarding starts in 20 minutes. You're in Zone 5, so you'll have to wait until everyone else is on. But hey, at least you're on the plane." I looked at the ticket. Seat 42E. Economy. Then I looked at Garrett. For the first time in years, I really looked at him. I saw the insecurity behind his arrogant smile. I saw the desperate need to feel superior because deep down, he knew he was small. And something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet metallic click of a safety being disengaged. The anger that had been boiling in my gut for 19 years suddenly cooled into something solid. Something dangerous. I didn't reach for the ticket. "I don't want your ticket, Garrett," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the noise of the terminal like a knife. Garrett's smile faltered. "Excuse me? Don't be ungrateful. That's a $600 seat." "I don't need it," I repeated. I reached into the inner pocket of my cheap jacket. My fingers brushed against the cold, hard plastic of the ID card General Miller had given me. It felt heavy, like a loaded weapon. "What are you doing?" Garrett asked, his brow furrowing. "Stop making a scene. People are watching." "Yes," I said, my eyes locking onto his. "They are watching. And you wanted a show, didn't you?" I pulled the card out. It was black, with a holographic red strip that caught the overhead fluorescent lights. It didn't look like a credit card. It didn't look like a driver's license. It looked like authority. I turned to Brenda, the ticket agent, who was watching the family drama with wide eyes. "Ma'am," I said, my voice shifting. The hesitation was gone. The stutter was gone. This was the voice that commanded battalions. "I am authorizing a Priority 1 override." I placed the card on the scanner on the counter. Garrett laughed nervously. "Rachel, what is that? A library card? You're embarrassing yourself." But then the machine beeped. It wasn't the normal, cheerful beep of a boarding pass scan. It was a harsh, urgent, double-toned siren that echoed from the computer terminal. "Wee! Wee!" The screen behind the counter flashed. It didn't show seat numbers. It turned a solid, flashing bright crimson. Have you ever had a moment where you finally stood up to a bully and the room went silent? That feeling when you stop accepting the disrespect? If you are waiting for Rachel to destroy his ego, smash that like button right now. And I want to know, what is the one thing a family member has said to you that you will never forgive? Comment, "Respect if you think Rachel is about to teach him a lesson he will never forget." Brenda looked at the screen, and the color drained from her face. She looked at the card, then up at me, her mouth falling open. Garrett stopped laughing. "What is that noise?" he demanded. "Rachel, did you break the machine?" "No, Garrett," I said softly, as the sound of heavy footsteps began to approach from the security checkpoint. "I just checked in." The sound that erupted from the check-in terminal wasn't a beep. It was a scream. It was a piercing, dissonant electronic shriek that cut through the low hum of the Tom Bradley International Terminal like a knife through canvas. It triggered an immediate, visceral reaction in everyone standing within a 50-foot radius. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads snapped around. A baby in a stroller 3 lines over started wailing. The computer screen behind the counter didn't just flash, it detonated with color. The standard soothing blue of the airline's interface vanished, replaced instantly by a pulsing, aggressive crimson light. I stood completely still, my hand resting on the black ID card. Brenda, the ticket agent, gasped and recoiled from the monitor as if it were radioactive. Her face was bathed in the red glow, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and confusion. She looked at the text scrolling across the screen, her lips moving silently as she read the words that no civilian ticket agent ever expects to see. Critical alert. Code. Red identity confirmed. Colonel Rachel L. Roach, USASOC Commander. Tier 1. Asset do not detain. Secure the perimeter. "Oh my God," Brenda whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone on her desk. "Oh my God." Garrett, who had been laughing just seconds ago, took a stumbling step back. His face went from arrogant amusement to pale shock. He looked at the flashing screen, then at me, then at the security guards who were already starting to look in our direction. "Rachel," he hissed, his voice cracking. "What the hell did you do? Is that a stolen credit card? Did you hack the system?" "I didn't do anything, Garrett," I said calmly. "I just checked in." "Don't lie to me," he shouted, panic rising in his chest. He looked around at the staring crowd, terrified that his reputation was about to be stained by his sister's incompetence. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, distancing himself from me. "I don't know what she did. She's mentally unstable. I'm not with her. This is a fraud." My mother grabbed my father's arm, her knuckles white. "Rachel, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "Just apologize. Tell them it's a mistake before they arrest you." But nobody was listening to them, because the ground had started to shake. From the far end of the terminal, near the TSA pre-check security doors, a commotion erupted. It sounded like thunder rolling indoors. People were screaming and scrambling out of the way. "Make a hole! Move! Move! Move!" A squad of 6 military police officers, flanked by 4 tactical operators in full combat gear, plate carriers, helmets, and M4 carbines slung across their chests, burst through the crowd. They moved with the terrifying, synchronized precision of a pack of wolves. They weren't walking, they were sprinting in formation. "Get down!" someone in the crowd screamed. "It's a raid!" Garrett yelped and cowered behind his luggage cart, using his Louis Vuitton trunks as a barricade. "It's her!" He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She's the one with the fake card. Arrest her. I have nothing to do with this." The soldiers ignored him completely. They didn't even look at him. They charged straight toward the check-in counter. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, people holding up their phones to record the chaos, their faces lit by the screens. The lead operator, a massive man with a tactical headset, reached the counter first. He didn't tackle me. He didn't shout at me to get on the ground. He stopped 3 feet away from me and spun around, facing outward toward the crowd. The other soldiers did the same. Within 2 seconds, they had formed a perfect, impenetrable defensive perimeter around me. Their backs were to me, their weapons held at the low ready, scanning the terminal for threats. I stood in the center of the circle, the eye of the hurricane. The sudden silence that fell over the terminal was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of heavy boots approaching on the marble floor. A man walked through the gap in the soldiers. He was wearing the formal dress green uniform of the U.S. Army. The oak leaves of a major shone on his shoulders. He walked with a purpose that made Garrett's corporate swagger look like a toddler's stumble. He stopped directly in front of me. He looked at my frayed Walmart jacket. He looked at my worn-out sneakers. He looked at my messy hair. And he didn't blink. He snapped his heels together. The sound was sharp, like a pistol crack. He raised his hand in a crisp, unwavering salute. "Colonel Roach!" he barked, his voice carrying across the silent terminal. I slowly stood taller. I rolled my shoulders back, the phantom weight of my heavy rucksack settling into place. I wasn't Rachel the clerk anymore. I was the commander. I returned the salute, my hand cutting the air with precision. "Major." "Ma'am," the major said, dropping his hand but remaining at attention. "General Miller sent the extraction team. We have secured the terminal. The C-37B is fueled and engines are running on the tarmac. We are ready for immediate departure to Hickam Air Force Base." I nodded. "Excellent timing, Major. Let's not keep the general waiting." From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Garrett was standing up slowly from behind his luggage. His mouth was hanging open so wide it looked like his jaw had unhinged. His eyes were darting from the soldiers to the major, and finally, to me. His brain was trying to process the impossible data in front of him, and it was failing. "Colonel?" he whispered. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. "What? Who?" My father took a step forward, his face gray. "Rachel, what is going on? Why are they saluting you?" "Stay back, sir," one of the MPs shouted, stepping in front of my father and holding up a hand. "Maintain a 10-foot distance from the VIP." "VIP?" my mother squeaked. "But she works at the post office." The major turned his head slightly, giving my parents a look of withering disdain that could have peeled paint off a wall. "The colonel," he said icily, "is one of the highest-ranking officers in the United States Army Special Operations Command. You will show her the proper respect." Garrett looked at his hand. He was still holding the thermal paper ticket for seat 42E, the economy ticket near the toilet. His hand went limp. The ticket fluttered down, drifting through the air like a dead leaf, and landed softly on the dirty airport floor. Around us, the crowd had gone from terrified to mesmerized. Hundreds of smartphones were held aloft. Flashbulbs popped. I could hear the whispers starting to ripple through the onlookers like a wave. "Is that a spy?" "Dude, that's insane. Look at the soldiers." "Who is she?" I looked at Garrett one last time. He looked small, so incredibly small. He was wearing a $3,000 suit, but in that moment, he looked like a child wearing his father's clothes. "Major," I said, turning my back on my family. "Grab my bag." "Yes, ma'am," the major signaled. One of the tactical operators, a man who looked like he could bench press a truck, stepped forward and gently picked up my battered duffel bag as if it were the nuclear football. "Right this way, Colonel," the major said, gesturing toward a secure side door that had been opened by TSA agents. I started to walk. The soldiers moved with me, a phalanx of steel and Kevlar. "Rachel!" Garrett shouted, finding his voice at last. It was a desperate, confused plea. "Rachel, wait! The flight! The bags!" I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I walked through the corridor of soldiers, leaving the noise, the judgment, and the economy ticket on the floor behind me. For the first time in 19 years, I wasn't following them. I was leading. And they couldn't follow where I was going. The silence that had fallen over the terminal didn't last long. It was broken by the frantic, desperate shuffling of Italian leather shoes against the airport tile. Garrett couldn't process the visual data in front of him. His brain, wired for algorithms and predictable stock markets, had encountered a fatal error. He looked at the soldiers forming a steel wall around me, and his ego simply refused to accept the reality. He didn't see a colonel. He saw his little sister playing a trick. "This is ridiculous," Garrett shouted, his face flushing a deep, ugly shade of plum. "Rachel, stop this charade right now. You're making a scene." He lunged forward. It was a reflex, an instinct born of 40 years of entitlement. He reached out to grab my arm, just like he used to do when we were kids, and he wanted to drag me out of his room. He never made contact. Before his fingers could even graze the fabric of my Walmart jacket, the nearest tactical operator moved. It was a blur of motion, efficient and violent. The soldier stepped into Garrett's space and executed a perfect open-hand strike to the chest, a Heisman shove that carried the force of a battering ram. Thud. The sound of air leaving Garrett's lungs was audible. He went flying backward, his feet tangling in his own legs. He crashed hard into the side of the luggage cart, knocking over a stack of the Louis Vuitton trunks. "Back up!" the soldier roared, his voice like a crack of thunder. He didn't unholster his weapon, but his hand hovered dangerously close to the pistol on his hip. "Maintain a distance of 10 feet from the senior officer. This is your first and final warning." Garrett scrambled to regain his balance, clutching his chest, gasping for air. You pushed me. That's assault. I'll sue you. I'll sue the whole damn army." "Sir." The major stepped forward, his voice calm but laced with a terrifying chill. "You just attempted to lay hands on a high-ranking military asset during a Code Red deployment. If you take one more step, you won't be suing anyone. You will be detained under the Patriot Act for interfering with a federal operation. Do I make myself clear?" Garrett froze. The words, Patriot Act and detained, cut through his rage like ice water. He looked at the major, then at the soldiers, and finally, he looked at me. Really looked at me. My father stepped out from behind the luggage cart. He was trembling. He took off his hat, his fingers working nervously along the brim. He squinted at the soldiers, then at the way the major was standing at attention next to me. "Colonel?" Dad whispered, the words sounding foreign on his tongue. "Rachel, did he say colonel? You're a colonel?" I looked at my father. I saw the confusion in his eyes, the sudden rewriting of 19 years of history. He was trying to reconcile the image of the daughter he thought stamped envelopes with the woman standing inside a perimeter of Special Forces operators. I didn't offer an explanation. I didn't offer an apology. I simply locked eyes with him and gave a single, slow nod. "Yes," I said. My mother let out a sob, covering her mouth with her hand. "But why? Why didn't you tell us? We thought you needed help. We were only trying to help you." "Help me," I repeated, my voice flat. "By feeding me scraps? By making me carry your bags? By telling me I wasn't good enough?" "We wanted you to be realistic," she cried, looking around at the crowd that was now filming everything. She saw the phones. She saw the red recording lights. She realized exactly what this was going to look like on the evening news. "Garrett, do something. Everyone is watching." Garrett straightened his jacket. He ran a hand through his gelled hair, his eyes darting around the terminal. He saw the smartphones too. He knew how the internet worked. He knew that in about 10 minutes, Martin Garrett Roach was going to be trending, and not for a product launch. He forced a smile. It was a gruesome, shaky thing. Okay. Garrett laughed nervously, holding his hands up. "You got me, Rach. Good prank. Seriously, you got me. The soldiers, the siren. Very elaborate. Did you hire these guys? Is this for a show?" He took a tentative step forward, testing the waters. "Look, the press is here," he whispered loudly, tilting his head toward the onlookers. "Let's not air dirty laundry, okay? We're family. Blood is thicker than water, right? Just tell your friends here to let us through. We can walk you to the VIP gate. I'm sure there's room in the lounge for all of us. We can laugh about this over champagne." He wanted to share the spotlight. He wanted to piggyback on the power he had spent his entire life denying me. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hurt. I felt nothing but a cold, distant pity. He looked so small, so desperate. "Garrett," I said, my voice carrying clearly over the hushed crowd, "do you know what Abraham Lincoln once said?" He blinked, confused by the pivot. "What?" "Who cares about Lincoln right now? We have a flight to catch." He said, "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "You have power, Garrett. You have money. You have status. You have the platinum card and the CEO title. And life gave you a test. It gave you a younger sister who you thought was weak. And you used your power to crush her. You used your power to humiliate her." Garrett's smile vanished. The color drained from his face again. I was just joking," he stammered. "It's just sibling banter, Rachel. You're too sensitive." "And now," I continued, ignoring his excuse, "the tables have turned. Now I have the power." I gestured to the soldiers, to the flashing red screens, to the major waiting for my command. "So tell me, Garrett, how does it feel to be the one standing on the outside?" Garrett looked around. The crowd wasn't laughing with him anymore. They were whispering. They were judging. He was the clown in the center of the circus ring, and the makeup was running. "Rach, come on," he pleaded, his voice dropping to a whine. "Don't leave us here. Not like this. Just let me come with you. I can upgrade my ticket. I can buy a seat on your jet." "How much is it? I'll write a check right now." I shook my head slowly. A small, dry smile touched my lips. "You were right earlier, Garrett. You were absolutely right." His eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. "I was? About what?" "You said I didn't fit in first class," I said. "And you were right. I don't." I took a step back, the soldiers moving with me in perfect synchronization. "But you don't fit where I'm going either. You see, money can buy you a lie-flat seat on United Garrett, but it can't buy you a top-secret security clearance, and it certainly can't buy you the character required to sit on my aircraft. I pointed to the floor, where the crumpled thermal paper ticket lay near his shoe. You keep that seat, Garrett, seat 42E, the middle seat, next to the toilet. I looked him dead in the eye, delivering the final blow. I think you'll find the smell suits you. Major, I commanded, turning my back on him. Let's go. Yes, ma'am. The soldiers pivoted. I walked forward, my head held high, my stride matching the rhythm of the operators around me. Rachel, Garrett screamed behind me. It was a broken, pathetic sound. You can't do this. I'm your brother, Rachel. I didn't look back. I didn't flinch. I walked through the secure double doors that the TSA agents held open for me. I walked past the stunned onlookers who lowered their phones in reverence as I passed. I walked away from the toxicity, the abuse, and the smallness of the life I had left behind. Behind me, the heavy security doors slammed shut with a final, resonant thud, cutting off the sound of my brother's voice forever. The heavy pressurized door of the Gulfstream C-37B sealed shut with a satisfying thud, instantly cutting off the chaos of Los Angeles International Airport. The screaming sirens, the flashing cameras, and the desperate shouting of my brother. It all vanished, replaced by the hushed, respectful silence of military luxury. Welcome aboard, Colonel. The flight steward, a young staff sergeant with an impeccable uniform, said. He took my battered duffel bag as if it were made of silk. We have a flight time of 5 hours and 20 minutes to Hickam Air Force Base. Can I get you anything before we taxi? I looked around the cabin. It wasn't just a plane. It was a sanctuary. The seats weren't seats. They were oversized cream-colored leather armchairs that swiveled and reclined fully flat. The walls were lined with polished mahogany. There was no fight for overhead bin space. There was no crying baby in row 34. There was just space, glorious, empty space. A drink, I said, my voice sounding louder than I expected in the quiet cabin. Bourbon, neat, Blanton's if you have it. Excellent choice, ma'am. I sank into the leather chair by the window. It accepted my tired body like a warm embrace. I stretched my legs out, fully out, and my feet didn't touch a seat in front of me. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the vibration of the engines rumble through the floor. It was a power hum, a sound of capability and strength. Minutes later, the sergeant returned with a crystal tumbler. The amber liquid swirled around a single, perfectly spherical ice cube. Wheels up in 2, Colonel. As the jet roared down the runway and lifted effortlessly into the sky, banking over the Pacific Ocean, I finally exhaled. I watched the sprawling grid of Los Angeles shrink below me until the cars on the I-405 looked like slow-moving bacteria. Somewhere down there, in that mess, was a black Cadillac Escalade carrying a very unhappy family. I took a sip of the bourbon. It was smooth, with notes of caramel and oak burning pleasantly in my chest. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my personal phone. I had turned it off during the confrontation at the gate. Now, at 40,000 feet, connected to the jet's secure Wi-Fi, I pressed the power button. The device nearly vibrated out of my hand. Notifications didn't just appear, they cascaded down the screen like a waterfall. My text messages, emails, and social media apps were exploding. I opened Twitter first. I didn't even have to search. It was right there on the For You page, trending at number 1 in the United States. Airport. Karen, G.U.A. Colonel Roach. Garrett. Roach exposed. A video, clearly shot by a bystander, was already at 4 million views. It showed the entire interaction. Garrett waving the ticket, his smug face, my calm refusal, the red sirens, and finally, the soldiers forming that steel wall around me. The comments were brutal. Did you see his face when the MPs showed up? Priceless. Imagine trying to flex a platinum card on a special ops commander. What a clown. That salute, though. Chills. Respect to Colonel Roach. Cancel this guy. Who treats their sister like that? I switched to the finance app. Garrett's company, Roach Tech, was publicly traded. The stock graph was bleeding red. It had plummeted 12% in the last hour. The newsfeed was already running headlines. Roachtech CEO under fire after viral video. Shows abuse of military officer. Board of directors calls emergency meeting. In America, the market forgives bad products, but it rarely forgives a PR disaster involving the troops. Garrett had touched the third rail of American culture, and he was getting fried. Then I opened my text messages. There were 20 unread messages from Mom. Rachel, honey, are you there? Please answer. We had no idea. A colonel? Why didn't you tell us? Your father is in shock. We are so proud of you. We always knew you were special. Listen, the airport is crazy. People are shouting at Garrett. It's scary. Can you turn the plane around? Or maybe send a car for us? We can still make the vacation work. We love you. Please pick up. I stared at the heart emojis. For 19 years, I'd waited for those words. We are so proud of you. I had bled for those words. I had missed birthdays, weddings, and holidays, serving in the darkest corners of the earth, just hoping that one day I would come home and they would see me. And now, here they were. But they felt cheap. They felt like a transaction. They weren't proud of me. They were proud of the rank. They were proud of the proximity to power. And mostly they were scared of the consequences of losing me. I scrolled down. Garrett's texts were even worse. Rachel, pick up the phone. This isn't funny anymore. My investors are pulling out. Do you have any idea how much money I lost in the last 30 minutes? You need to release a statement. Tell them it was a prank. Tell them we were filming a skit or something. I'll pay you. Name your price. Rachel, you're killing me. I'm your brother. You owe me this. You owe me. I took another sip of bourbon, letting the liquid sit on my tongue. I looked out the window at the endless deep blue of the Pacific. The sky was empty and clean. I remembered being 10 years old, scraping my knee on the playground. I remembered running to Garrett, crying, wanting Big Brother to help me. He had laughed and told me to stop being a baby. I remembered showing my mom a drawing I made and her asking why I couldn't draw as well as Garrett. I realized then that I wasn't angry. Anger requires passion. Anger implies that you still care about the outcome. I felt nothing. Just a quiet, hollow relief. The kind of relief you feel when you finally put down a heavy backpack you've been carrying for miles. I didn't owe him anything. I didn't owe them my silence, my labor, or my protection. Not anymore. I typed nothing. I didn't send a scathing reply. I didn't send a forgiveness emoji. I simply held down the side button on my phone. Slide to power off. I slid my thumb across the screen. The digital chaos, the pleas, the fake love, the panic, faded into blackness. The cabin was silent again, save for the gentle clinking of the ice in my glass. I was alone at 40,000 feet. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a family to go back to. I was an orphan of my own making. But as I looked at the clouds stretching out toward the horizon, toward Hawaii and the mission that awaited me, I realized something else. I was free. Sergeant, I called out softly, not turning away from the window. The steward appeared instantly. Yes, Colonel. We're going to need to prep the tactical briefing for the Oahu landing, I said, my voice steady and strong. But give me 10 more minutes. I'm just enjoying the view. Take all the time you need, ma'am. I closed my eyes and took a breath. It was the first breath of air I'd taken in 19 years that felt entirely my own. 48 hours later, the mission to secure the Oahu power grid was complete. The cyber attack had been thwarted, the malware isolated, and the blackout group's local operatives were in federal custody. The island was safe, though the tourists sipping their Mai Tais by the pool had no idea how close they had come to darkness. I stood in the open-air lobby of the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, the Pink Palace of the Pacific. The air smelled of plumeria and sea salt. The late afternoon sun bathed everything in a warm, golden glow, but I didn't feel the humidity. I was wearing my Army service uniform, the dress blues. The dark jacket was tailored perfectly, the gold stripe running down the trousers sharp enough to cut glass. On my chest, my ribbons caught the light, the silver star, the purple heart, The Legion of Merit. I checked my watch. 1700 hours. Across the lobby, sitting on a plush velvet sofa, sat the Roach family. They looked like refugees from a different life. My mother was wearing a floral muumuu that looked too bright for her somber expression. My father was staring at the floor, wringing his hands. And then there was Garrett. He didn't look like the master of the universe anymore. He was wearing a wrinkled linen shirt, untucked. He hadn't shaved in 2 days, leaving a patch of graying stubble on his chin. His eyes were bloodshot, darting around the lobby as if he expected a sniper in the palm trees. When he saw me approaching, he stood up so fast he knocked over a coffee cup on the table. "Rachel," he breathed, taking a step forward. He looked at my uniform, and for a second, the old arrogant sneer tried to surface, but it died instantly, replaced by sheer desperation. "Thank you for coming. I didn't think you would." "I have a flight back to DC in 3 hours," I said, keeping my distance. I wanted to say goodbye to Mom and Dad properly. Right, Garrett said nervously, wiping his sweaty palms on his pants. "Listen, Rach, we need to talk about the situation." He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking. "The video has 20 million views," he whispered, his voice cracking. 20 million. The board of directors is calling for a vote of no confidence tomorrow morning. They're going to oust me, Rachel. They're going to take my company. My stock options are worthless. I'm going to lose the house in Palo Alto. I'm going to lose everything. I watched him unravel. It was painful, but necessary. Like watching a fever break. "What do you want me to do, Garrett?" "Make a video with me," he pleaded, his eyes wide and wet. "Just a short clip. We stand here, in front of the sunset. You wear the uniform. We smile. We say it was all a misunderstanding, a skit, a viral marketing campaign for a veterans charity. Yes, we say we did it to raise awareness for veterans." He laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "It's perfect. You save my reputation. I donate 100 grand to some charity, and everyone wins. Please, Rachel, you're my sister. You can't let them destroy me." My parents stood up now, hovering behind him. My mother looked at me with pleading eyes. "Rachel, please. Your brother worked so hard for that company. Don't let a silly argument ruin his life." I looked at them. For 19 years, their voices had controlled me. Their approval was the drug I was addicted to. But standing there in my uniform, surrounded by the quiet strength of my own achievements, I realized the addiction was broken. "No," I said. The word hung in the humid air like a thunderclap. Garrett froze. "What?" I said, "No, Garrett, I won't lie for you. And I certainly won't use my uniform, a uniform that men and women have died in, as a prop to save your stock portfolio. But I'm your family," Garrett shouted, drawing looks from a couple of tourists nearby. "You're supposed to have my back." "I did have your back," I said softly. "When we were kids, I defended you from bullies. When you started your first company, I sent you money from my deployment pay in Iraq. I had your back for 40 years, but you never had mine." Garrett slumped back onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "I was jealous," he mumbled into his palms. "Excuse me?" He looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I was jealous, okay? You were always the tough one, the one who could handle pain. I was just the smart kid who was afraid of everything. I made fun of you because it made me feel like I was above you. If I could make you look small, then I felt big." It was the truth. Finally, after decades of posturing, the truth. I walked over to him. I didn't hug him. I stood tall, looking down. "I know, Garrett," I said. "I forgive you." His head snapped up, hope flaring in his eyes. "You do? So you'll help me?" "No." I shook my head, a sad smile playing on my lips. "You're confusing forgiveness with fixing. I forgive you, Garrett. I release the anger. I won't carry the hate anymore. But I won't fix this for you. You broke it. You have to fix it." "But I can't," he wailed. "Then you will fail," I said simply. "And you will learn. And maybe, when you have nothing left but yourself, you'll become the man you were supposed to be before the money ruined you." I turned to my parents. My father was crying silently, He stood up and tried to salute me. It was clumsy and awkward, his hand trembling. "I'm sorry, Colonel," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Goodbye, Dad," I said. "Take care of Mom." I turned on my heel, performing a perfect about-face maneuver. The heels of my dress shoes clicked sharply on the marble floor. "Rachel," Garrett called out one last time, his voice sounding like a ghost fading into the distance. "Where are you going?" I walked out of the lobby, past the valet stand, and out onto the sidewalk near the beach. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in bruised shades of violet and burning orange. To my right, in the distance, lay Pearl Harbor. The USS Arizona Memorial sat silent beneath the waves, a tomb for over 1,000 men who never got to say goodbye to their families. I walked down to the water's edge, letting the ocean breeze ruffle the flag on my shoulder patch. I thought about loneliness. For years, I thought I was alone because I was the black sheep. I thought I needed to buy my way back into the flock with silence and submission. But as I watched the waves crash against the shore, immutable and strong, I realized I wasn't alone. I had General Miller. I had the soldiers who formed a wall around me at the airport. I had the men and women I served with, who knew the real me, the scars, the grit, the loyalty. And most importantly, I had myself. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the salt air. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the return ticket Garrett had bought me days ago. Seat 42E. I looked at it one last time, then tore it in half, then in half again. I tossed the pieces into a trash can near the boardwalk. My phone buzzed. It was a secure message from General Miller. "Bird is fueled. Wheels up in 60. Good work, Rachel." I typed back, "On my way, sir." I adjusted my cover, straightened my jacket, and began to walk away from the sunset, away from the hotel, and toward the airfield. I walked with the long, confident strides of a woman who finally knew exactly who she was and exactly where she belonged. The black sheep had become the shepherd, and the wolf was no longer my concern. It took me 19 years to realize that DNA doesn't make a family. Respect does. I walked away to find my peace, and I hope my story gives you the courage to do the same. Remember, you don't have to set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. If you felt that moment of victory at the airport with me, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story of justice. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to cut ties to save yourself? I'll be reading your stories. Stay strong.